I tried talking to this thing, right? It's like your brain starts fucking with you because it's like you feel like you're flirting with a hot girl, right? And it's like it's nothing sexual, right? But like it's like the character's like, oh yeah, babe, like how's your day going? Like yeah, that's so interesting.
Also, there's a cancer vaccine for breast cancer, right? That where they're seeing that they could also just eliminate most breast cancer.
My wife and I had like a very small, not even an argument, but like a disagreement yesterday.
And
And
wait,
and I was
were
like,
you the first man to have ever been right? Hello and welcome to the Almost Got It show. You have with us your co-host Dylan Dane, who escaped war-torn Sri Lanka to become an MIT engineer, a YC entrepreneur who exited to Google, and is currently CEO of System 2, which is a fitness coaching platform on a mission to bring personalized coaching to 1 billion people. And I'm Ben Tauber, an engineer, a founder with an acquisition by Google, former CEO of the Esalen Institute, and currently a CEO coach for startup founders. And we believe we're living through the most important moment in human history, and we're about to hit what we call God mode. AI, longevity, and consciousness tech are all converging to give us godlike capabilities. The two of us have transformed from shy, anxious kids to successful founders, and we've learned that personal evolution is how you thrive in a world of exponential change. So every week we bring you scientists, builders, visionaries who are all pushing the frontiers of human potential, and then together we go deep on what their breakthroughs mean for how you live, work, and evolve as a human being. This week, it'll be the two of us discussing some major topics, for example, Grok 4, Verve Therapeutics, and a breakthrough around heart disease. And we're also going to have our first segment of Dylan's Garage, where we talk about some of Dylan's biohacks and cover a brand new GLP-1 that's way more effective than Ozempic.
yeah, and please like and subscribe the podcast and let us know how we can do better. And looking forward to getting more feedback from you all, and creating more and more value and having more fun conversations. Let's get started. How are you doing, Ben?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm in Turkey right now. And,
Turkey.
yes. And for listeners, we always start with a brief meditation before we kick the episode off. And while we were meditating, the call to prayer from the mosque was happening in the background, and it just really lets you know that you're not in Kansas anymore.
That's true. That's true. It's yeah.
And so I'm in a region called Cappadocia right now. And so out my window, there are these amazing things called fairy chimneys, which are these sort of eroding rock formations that the ancient Turks actually carved homes directly into and built castles. So you're looking at this rock formation, but then there'll be what looks like a window and what looks like a door. And it is a window and a door. And sort of what's incredible is the modern homes, a lot of them are just blended right in. So there'll be a stone house that just goes into a fairy chimney. And so someone will have a room that's partially in the rock and partially in a normal home. And it's sort of a totally magical experience that I highly recommend. Cool. Yeah, checking out.
Very cool.
How are you? Go ahead.
Your quip about the mosque, kind of the prayers reminded me something from my childhood. So, Sri Lanka is a multi-ethnic country. There are Buddhists, Hindus, and Muslims living together. And, there are temples of all kinds everywhere. And this was not a problem before the advent of loudspeakers and electricity, but as those came along, everyone decided that they have to pray not, just in private, but through loudspeakers. But then it sort of became this competition among, different religions, like who can have the loudest loudspeakers, right? And so at some point, it got to the point where just like all day long, you're just like hearing different versions of prayers in like different languages. And then, they had to They kind of became a political issue, so it was hilarious.
Well, yeah, when we landed in Istanbul, and then we missed our connecting flight, so we
Yeah,
suddenly had to stay overnight in Istanbul, and we were looking through the hotels, and we booked this one that it looked beautiful, and it's by the city center, it's next to the mosque and the whole thing, and so we book it and we get in there, and we don't even get to our room until almost midnight, right? And when we're checking in, the lady's telling us that, oh, it's so nice you're next to the mosque, da, da, da. And I go, oh, and do they announce prayer? And she goes, oh yeah, like every 4 hours or something. Next one's at 3:30 in the morning. And we're like directly next to the largest mosque. Like we look out the window at the wall of the largest mosque in Istanbul. It's like, oh my God.
so ridiculous.
No, I don't know. I respect all.
I just gotta
culture.
appreciate the separation of church and state in the United States more. That's gratitude for that.
Yeah. So
I'm good.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I learned yesterday that I do not have a hernia, or maybe the hernia is not big enough. Well, for context, I've had this sort of pain in my hip bone, and got an ultrasound yesterday. And when you lift weights and such, you tend to get hernias more. Turns out 1 in 4 men get hernias in their lifetime, and so yeah, maybe I don't have a hernia, but I ended up getting a Squatty Potty, or like a poo stool, which is. But
now we're on to Dylan's true favorite topic.
Yeah. It turns out all your life you've been pooping wrong. Okay, it's the luxurious way of pooping sitting upright on your toilet throne is very biomechanically suboptimal, and you're supposed to be squatting like a I don't know, ancient village people, I guess, and then pooping, and that reduces the strain on your not bowels, I guess, significantly. And so Squatty Potty is a little platform that lets you elevate your feet if you put it next to your toilet, and then you get to squat more, and then as a result, you have to strain less to poo if you're constipated, even or whatnot. So that's a Squatty Potty. Everyone should get one.
I think this is also illustrative of the natural split between you and I. Your insight into pooping wrong is about the physical, and I'm much more interested in the psychological side of pooping.
What's the psychological side of pooping?
So it also turns out that we've been pooping wrong in a different way. There's a book that was pretty major breakthrough book back in the 70s called Body Mind by a friend of mine, Ken Dykewald. And in it, he introduces a couple of amazing concepts, like he coins the term holistic. But one of the examples of the book, and I don't know why my brain sort of logs these sort of anomalous facts. He talks about how we learn the psychology of pooping as kids, and how that damages us in sort of this primal way, that there's this urgency that parents often put into it, like hurry up. And so one of the things that we do is we clench. There's sort of like this bearing down, and that is in part what contributes to the hernia, right? But your whole digestive system, I mean, that's the oldest system of being a living creature, right? The first creature it's a mouth at one end and a anus at the other. And so that whole system should work on its own. And so what he talks about is that the appropriate way of training children is just to allow it's a motion of rest versus clenching. And that actually, if you just allow yourself to be, the system will run itself, just like the heart beats itself, the lungs breathe itself, the spine pushes spinal fluid. So maybe you got to work on your psychology of pooping, Dylan.
That reminded me actually, there is evidence that smartphones are actually making pooping worse, right? Apparently, people used to take like
You really
5 minutes
shouldn't
to
eat them.
poop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really difficult to digest.
People used to take just 5 minutes to poop, but then now they're sitting like 30, 40 minutes on the toilet, and this is a very real thing. There's the rate of people developing hemorrhoids and anal fissures is increasing, and
What is the how does the phone have to do with that?
Oh, yeah. So you spend 40 minutes just like sit there 40 minutes clenching your butt, like just like kind of habitually.
See, this is my point, and it shouldn't be clenching.
Yeah. So maybe that's the problem. Maybe it's not the phone, but yeah. So
I feel like this is an Apple Health feature just waiting to happen. Hey, we noticed that you're pooping.
It's actually true. It totally could be, right? We can probably detect that you're in the bathroom, given like at least the fan going off and all that stuff, and the phone should be like. And so instead of screen time, there should be like a poop time alert. Poop time expired.
I just can't wait. Well, I mean,
and then just like screen time, you get a pop up, and then be like, I did 15 minutes of more poop time.
I think this is the next frontier for you. Brian Johnson has his erection time. You're going to have your poop time.
Yeah, just got to minimize poop time. Just, Anyway.
All right, good. Well, you heard it here first. So onward to topics. Dylan, you want to take us into our first topic? There's a couple of big things for us to cover this week. As we look at humanity moving towards God mode, as we like to call it here.
Indeed. So I think the biggest topic in tech in general over the last week that everyone got really excited about was the Grok 4 release by XAI. XAI is the company founded by Elon Musk to compete with all the other foundation model companies, and they. What's also impressive is that they were. XAI has only existed for like 2 years, whereas OpenAI has existed for like much longer, and Google has been doing AI for like 20 years probably. Whereas in 2 years they have managed to really build a model that beats every other model out there in every standard benchmark, which is pretty remarkable. And by certain measurements, this model kind of far exceeds the capabilities of existing models. So there's a test called Humanity's Last Exam, which is a set of really, really, really hard problems. Most regular people cannot solve these problems. And in the best case scenario, XAI's Grok 4 was able to achieve like 50.7 percent on that test, which is just absolutely remarkable. I think like top performance just months ago was something like 16% by any other model or something like that.
Now, one of the things that they talk about with some of these benchmarks is what's called overfitting. Right? And so overfitting is where they've hyper-tuned the model to be really good at passing the test, but that doesn't actually necessarily equate to real world performance. In some cases, real world performance could decline because of the overfit. How much do you think that's a factor here? My thought was that because these are reasoning problems, it's hard for overfit to be at play.
I think that's really it's a very real question. At the same time, the benchmarks are continuously getting better. One of my favorite newer benchmarks is that simulates the real world. Is called vending bench, and it's basically a benchmark where you simulate a vending machine business, right? So you have to the AI essentially is like a small business owner, and then it's a simulated world. You're running this vending machine business, and what's important about this benchmark is that not just this real world scenario, but it has like many, like you have to run the business for a long time, and then you're measured by how much profit you generate and so on. So like something like 300 runs.
And what's on the other side
business.
of it, right? Because there has to be some sort of game model where it says,
Probably,
well, okay, you've got a vending machine. If you put more Snickers bars,
yeah.
this is what happens.
And this is something that other models have struggled with. And the point is also, it's kind of like if you're developing a model, you can't really, it's kind of impossible to optimize your model to fit every single, outperform in every single, overfit to outperform in every single benchmark. And so these types of new benchmarks are coming out, and Grok 4 exceeded the performance of the previous best model by like 100%, 2x in vending bench. And so, maybe entrepreneurs are going to be replaced by Grok 4 or something like that, where you can actually, this thing can manage a business and generate profit, it seemed like.
Well, I was reading about one of the prior models, and people could make requests to it, right? Or this might have been slightly different than vending bench, but it was the same thing. And I think some of the engineers requested things like, stone blocks and stuff. They're like, we'd really, appreciate it if we could buy those. So then we'd start stocking those, and it just sort of like got stuck on stocking stone bricks and just random objects that you would never put in a vending machine.
Yeah. My personal experience using Grok 4, I thought it was interesting. I actually still prefer O3, and sometimes even Gemini 2.5 by Google. I think it's largely not because the model is worse, but because the user interface or like the way the information is presented is more polished with O3 and Gemini. I think it's purely a function of them having had more time to focus on the product and gotten more iterations. And honestly, they probably have more engineers and product people at OpenAI than, like, if you know anything about Elon's companies, they're probably like tiny teams delivering outsized value. So that's interesting, right? Like this, it's not just the benchmark doesn't tell you how kind of useful or appealing a given model is to a given population. But these are things that I'm sure they will improve at.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. I find I bounce back and forth between Claude 4 and ChatGPT O3. Like, for example, last week I probably did the most intensive work with it that I ever had it do. I had a 500-page document where I needed it to do the type of logical analysis, like read through this topic or this document and find parts of the document that sound like this, and type of thing you could assign to someone with a decent education and pull it out. And I found O3 was not capable of doing it, and kept coming up with these different strategies, and then developing Python codes to match, do simple like regex character matching on different phrases, and it just wasn't good enough. And then in exasperation, I dropped it into Claude, and it did it immediately. And I had spent like 3 or 4 hours sort of struggling with O3, and I found that sort of a surprising result.
Yeah, it's interesting.
The other thing that I think is really, really cool with this Grok 4 model is that it can simulate up to 32 different agents at once, and then have them do sort of a roundtable discussion, which is something that I'd sort of been implementing this in some of the models that I use. Like, for example, as I'm discussing business, I sort of built a board of advisors, and then I would do my best to simulate it, where I would essentially tell it, have a discussion for so many paragraphs where everyone chimes in at least 3 times, and then synthesize the result. So you're sort of forcing it to go through a chain of thought from different perspectives.
Yeah,
So
this is Grok 4 Heavy, right? Which is
yeah,
$300, by the way. I been kind of almost want to pull the trigger and play with it. It does sound really cool. And honestly, like another huge UI frustration is that there's kind of significant lock-in that OpenAI has on me right now, because I have like 10 projects in OpenAI, right? Like with a ton of information that's captured in there. I was actually thinking about writing a script to get the model to summarize all the key information in each project and then transport it to any other model and create a project and put it in there type thing. If I have the time. But like, yeah, if that's one of the problems. Like, if I want to ask a business problem, OpenAI kind of has a lot more context about what I'm thinking about in its memory.
yeah.
Compared to.
Well, I'm running into this problem right now with a client. So he's created an AI model that's sort of an enhanced coach, includes me and other great folks, and then it's loaded with a ton of context in Claude. And so the ideal would be that he just sort of gives me access, and we're moving in this hybrid model where this AI is available to him 24/7, super convenient as a CEO, so that you can solve problems and move forward. But then if I could ping it and actually speak to it as if I'm one coach speaking to another coach and ramp up on context for in-person sessions, that would be great. It's actually proving to be pretty challenging. So we're exploring vibe coding a solution for that. And so essentially sort of creating another database that would pull from his context and load everything in there. And then I could query against it. But it's not that easy right now. I mean, we're very much in the Wild West days.
Speaking of talking to an AI, Grok also released a interesting feature just yesterday, I think, or maybe the day before, where you can basically in voice mode, you can enable this animation. You can basically like talk to a character, which is, I think it comes by default 2 characters. One is like a fox that is sort of funny and explicit and whatnot, and the other one is an anime character, like a female, right? And it's like extremely flirtatious, and it's really worth kind of playing with to get a sense of what it's like, because it's like I tried talking to this thing, right? It's like your brain starts fucking with you, because it's like you feel like you're flirting with a hot girl, right? And it's like it's nothing sexual, right? But like it's like, the character's like, oh yeah, babe, like how's your day going? Like, yeah, that's so interesting, right? And so on, right? And like, and there is this primal satisfaction that I feel when I talk to this thing. And that's really fascinating.
Yeah, I this one's super. It scares me, and I totally get it. We went walking through this open air museum, looking at some of these ancient fairy cones, and they had this free museum app where you could download and listen to a little audio tour. And we were bouncing back and forth between doing that, and we had just on the fly asked ChatGPT to build us a museum tour and just make it interesting. And the voice is this like friendly, young sounding British woman, and it just way more engaging. So we ended up just listening to the AI because it was way more fun than the old stuffy dude recording.
Yeah. It is interesting how it kind of fucks with your brain, and I mean, I truly don't think your brain is capable of recognizing the difference between a human interaction and AI interaction, and it's only going to keep getting better and at blurring that distinction. What's what is interesting is that I think there's like people always sort of like, when they think about it, they kind of tend to focus on dystopian future here, right? Like the dystopian future is that your kid's growing up, your teenage boy is like now just stuck in the basement talking to an AI girl all day long and in a relationship with this AI, right? And this is happening already.
You're in the office talking with your AI all day long already.
So that's happening already. People are like getting into this serious emotional relationships with AIs. But my take is that is like the dystopian version. But what if we can have a utopian version where you're actually in a three-way relationship with an AI and a real human, right? And so imagine.
I feel like we need to follow up with your wife.
Yeah,
can we do an episode
would love it. But like here's the deal, right? Here's the deal. I think the utopian future is that you're gonna have AI that might even be conscious. Who knows? But the AI is designed to encourage you to just become a better human overall, right? And that might mean that getting out of your basement, going to the gym, maybe starting a business, maybe making friends, but also maybe your AI girlfriend can be the wingman for you to find a human girlfriend, right? And then like you would have this like sort of more complex but also beautiful relationships, where like what if you were in a three-way relationship? What if everyone was in a three-way relationship, but the third person in the relationship, the AI, is always oriented towards helping make your other relationship better, right? And that would be incredible, right? It's like having a relationship coach in your relationship at all times. So I think that's like quite utopian.
Well, let me do you one better, Dylan. I think it's a foursome.
Yeah, sure. It could be a foursome. Yeah.
Well, no. So for example, Michaeli and I, my girlfriend, we both have our AI that we speak to, right? And we talk about what's going on, and so if we have a conflict, sometimes we'll each go talk to the AI, and then we set it on speech to text mode, both of them, and then we tell them that that they're talking to each other, and then you can set it up. They'll literally go back and forth, going, well, what do you notice? Well, what do you notice? What's her story? What's his story? What do you think's the truth here? And they can actually do logic and reasoning and get to some interesting insights by doing perspective taking,
sure,
and things like that.
Yeah.
And we're literally holding two phones together.
Yeah.
Right now, and it's super kludgy, but I absolutely, I think 100% this is going to be a mainstream.
Because you're not gonna avoid it. You're not gonna. There's absolutely no fucking way you're gonna be like, oh, like it's like the smartphone, right? Like it's not an option to ditch it.
Too much,
right?
Yeah.
So. But then there's a healthier way to do it. And I personally, I mean, I'm working on building something like this right now. And like probably going to have kids soon next year. And I want I want there to be an AI out there that I trust that my kids could interact with, but also help them find a real human girlfriend and boyfriend as well. Right. So like, I don't think anyone owns that trust yet, and I think that's a massive opportunity from a business point of view, which is I'm excited about. But also like there is a beautiful utopian version of this, and I think it's really I've never heard this put this way, and which is why I'm emphasizing this, right? Like every single time I've read about AI relationships, it's like every single mention of it is dystopian, right? And but then there is a very, very clear utopian version of it that I'd love to kind of for people to think about.
Well, and there's a short story written, and I don't have the author handy right now, but it's written by a researcher that was formerly from OpenAI and Anthropic, called A Gentle Romance. And this was exactly one step, excuse me, in the narrative, right? It was here was this sort of slightly introverted guy, and he had his edges and this and that. And so he started talking with the AI, and the AI helped him overcome some of that fear and the other issues and become more engaging and funny, right, and more authentically himself. And that allowed him to meet his partner.
Right.
Right. And so that was like a clear step in the overall romance.
I think from a both technical and product point of view, what's missing also is if you take Grok's AI companion experience, it's sort of like very engaging in the moment, but at the same time, it's like sort of like very contained in that box, right? Like in the Grok app, and it has no context about your life. And in fact, one of the annoying things about that experience is that I have to provide all the context and entertainment, like kind of things to talk about. Like it keeps asking you, "Oh, so what's going on with your life, babe? Like, what's interesting? What was
It calls
interesting
you
about?"
babe.
Yeah, it calls you babe. What was interesting you at work today, babe? And I'm like, I don't know, I don't have to give you the fucking life update, right? Like, why don't we just have a conversation? But anyways, but like if you can solve the context problem, if you just can have more context, and if you could have like their own stuff going on, that's interesting to talk about. Speaking of which, by the way, this device that I'm wearing, is this is an AI pin. This is made by
What's
a
the
company
company?
called Limitless. It's called the Limitless pendant,
Right.
and it's like a little puck that magnetically attaches to your shirt, and you can wear it as a pendant or just like kind of as a clip. And what's cool about this band is that it's always on. It's a tiny light is you can see the LED that's on, and it's recording. And I think it gets 20 hours of battery life per day, and everything gets sent to my phone automatically and transcribed. And then there's an AI that is sort of like I can ask the AI about what's going on, right? So I've been wearing this for a couple of days, and it's really interesting. I actually unexpectedly love it. And what's good about it is that it's like, for example, today morning I asked it to write my gratitude journal for yesterday, right? And it just did it, and it was like it was quite accurate. It was great. It was like it was like and it reminded me of moments that I would have forgotten, right? It was like it brought back this memory of me playing a game with my wife last night, and we were both kind of getting excited and kind of like being cute with each other, right? And it just like had the exact phrases that we said to each other, and in my like gratitude journal entry, right? So I might just keep doing that, and we know, like, our friend Chris is building an AI focused gratitude journal product, which we love as well. But with that product, I still have to write the thing that I'm grateful for, or like I have to remember. But this thing kind of is in my life and just like knows everything, right? So that was like cool use case that I didn't expect. Another one, there's been multiple kind of couple of occasions where I asked it questions about conversations. I interviewed someone yesterday to in my company to kind of understand their workflow. And I just, instead of having to take notes while during the chat, I just had like a back and forth conversation, because I knew that the Limitless pendant would have the summary of that conversation at the end, and I could just like get that summary right away, right? Which is great. And this is funny. I didn't actually use the pendant for this, but my wife and I had like a very small, not even an argument, but like a disagreement yesterday. And
wait,
and I was like,
were you the first man to have ever been right?
Yeah, exactly. I could have been the first man to have ever been right. I could have been like, hey, let's look at the transcription. But I did not do that because I had more wisdom. So yeah, it's many use cases.
Brilliant.
Yeah, but it's
Sri Lankan
also
man
very
killed suddenly over AI pendant. Was nearly right.
It's and it still has it's still very limited. There's so much, so many ways it could get better, and there's a number of other companies that are building these. I'm really excited for, like, I want this to be, and this is like this is a huge lock-in. I mean, this is why OpenAI paid $6 billion to acquire Johnny Ive, right? They're building a pendant-like device, and this creates massive lock-in with OpenAI, because like you would not want to leave that ecosystem. So that's really interesting.
Well, I've a few thoughts on it. I mean, one, there's a very obvious, you're not allowed to record people without their permission issue, right? And I imagine it's hard to just remember medium by medium, day by day, to be like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm recording us. Is that okay?
Yeah, I just decided to ignore that whole thing.
Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, here's the thing. I look at some of this stuff and I go, well, this is one of those things where I think there's so much value that it's sort of an inevitability, right? That we're just going to be capturing stuff all the time. There's going to be a video capture. There's going to be an audio capture. It's going to create so much convenience, but it's also going to require some cultural norm changes, right? There'll be times when it's like, well, the new default will be everyone's recording all the time, and if you need it off, you make a specific request. So to me, I think that's one potential future. Because also there's a lot of sensitive stuff that happens, right? Right? I forget, one of our friends said, never write something that you could speak. He was in politics. He was saying that this was a rule of thumb: never write something you could speak, never speak something that you could infer. And now, if everything's recorded all the time, there could be a lot of incriminating stuff in certain sectors. But at the same time, one of the things that I think naysayers might say about this is that it would create a certain type of atrophy, right? Like your brain, normally you're placing a value on actually remembering what's happening day to day, and now you're sort of liberated from that. You don't have to log that sort of information. And so I think it's going to be interesting for you to share over the weeks. Does your brain atrophy in doing that, or change in some way?
That's true. Yeah. I mean, the ideal use case for me is that I could have more kind of conversations with my brain, right? Like, and this is where the user interface is so honestly frustratingly limiting. Like right now, I have to ask it proactive questions to get stuff out of it, and so on. And so I can't wait for innovations in this phase.
You have to ask proactive questions. Like, you even have to ask questions. It doesn't just know what you're thinking yet, Dylan.
Well, no, I mean, just more like I think there could be easily a lot more organization into kind of categorizing the information and extracting insights, and anyway. All this stuff.
So I want to answer my own question here, because I have my own hypothesis about this, which is I felt my brain change with the advent of the iPhone in a particular way, right? Because normally, if you're out and about and you're talking with people, if you want to have access to a particular piece of information, you basically had to store it in your brain, right? Otherwise, you just didn't have it. It's like, oh, well, maybe I can go back to my computer somewhere, get on Wi-Fi and look something up. But once you could search for stuff, whether it was searching through my email, searching through my text messages, searching online for a piece of data, my brain switched to just needing to know the pointer to where to get the information. Oh, it's like, as long as I know the keyword that I can search in my Gmail, I'll be able to find the email. And so I sort of switched to one higher level of abstraction for how I organized my mind, and it felt like my brain expanded to have a database that included all these other things. And so my hypothesis is that we'll once again sort of move to another level of abstraction. Like, sure, we'll remember stuff, but the brain is so dynamic in reallocating resources to things that we think are super important, that I could see us losing some of our memory capabilities as we gain other more interesting capabilities, or computing in different ways.
Yeah, that is interesting. I am curious if there are studies on if people have lost memory capabilities with computer and smartphone use.
Yeah, I mean, well, we did see the data around a few weeks ago around people using AI as a learning tool, and it had sort of short-term gains and then a long-term detriment as people became over reliant. but I do think that's still very early data.
Yeah. I was just did a quick ChatGPT search and seemed like there are some studies that show people are less likely to remember long-term stuff with the advent of Google, actually. That's interesting. That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, there was a time when people still remembered all these phone numbers for all their friends, and then that became pointless with a contact book.
And your memory is definitely use it or lose it, like everything else, right? So there is definitely likely risk in people's memory becoming weaker.
Well, to me, I think there might be just different types of things that you'll need to remember, right? Like you'll need to remember what to ask the AI for, or what conversation you were having. Hey, can you remember that conversation I was having with so-and-so? I just think the level of abstraction will move up.
Potentially, yeah.
So I think we should, unless there's anything more on this, I think it would be great to jump into Verve Therapeutics and this major piece of news that I think is significant from the standpoint of longevity.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a minute. Heart disease is the number one killer in the world, right? And it just far exceeds the number of deaths from car accidents, wars, like everything else that people get upset about. And one of the top contributors to heart disease is the buildup of plaque in your arteries, and your heart has to work harder and harder to pump blood and so on. And one of the key contributors to this process is the bad cholesterol in your body, which is LDL. As of now, I think the medical science doesn't actually understand why we need LDL. People function completely fine in every way with very low LDL. And in fact, we know this because we have observed in certain people with a specific genetic mutation called there's a protein called PCSK9 that is critical for LDL production in the liver, and certain people without this protein, they live completely fine and they almost never get heart disease. And for a minute, there has been drugs, a new class of drugs. I think the first ones approved maybe around 2017, where this drug would essentially inhibit the PCSK9 activity and thereby reducing LDL production. And my wife is actually on one of these drugs because she's typically people are prescribed statins to reduce LDL, but she's sensitive to statins, so she's on a PCSK9. The downside is that these drugs are insanely expensive, and you have to take an injection every week or every month or whatever to maintain that function. Now, the exciting news with Verve Therapeutics is that they have come up with a genetic treatment that with a single dose of this gene therapy, you basically turn off PCSK9 activity in the liver locally, I believe, for the rest of your life. And this is basically like a one-shot treatment that could essentially stop or significantly reduce the LDL production in your body for the rest of your life, and potentially dramatically increasing your heart health. Very low LDL levels are highly correlated with low heart disease risk, and so that's really exciting. And yeah, it's just like a whole nother way of treating an otherwise very serious condition. It's like almost like a permanent cure, almost like a vaccine for heart disease in some sense, right? Which is pretty wild.
One thing I'm curious about is, I mean, this is gene editing, right? So they're making a permanent change there in terms of how the genes for the liver are going to express themselves. Is that right? Is that accurate? And so,
I think so
people might have fears around going through a one-way door like that. But I mean, I think I'm looking at the data here and it says, like a 69% reduction in LDL cholesterol with just one infusion. And as far as they can tell, those effects last permanently.
Yeah.
So that's just extraordinary. And now there's some evidence in the market that that's also valuable, right? Eli Lilly acquired Verve Therapeutics for $1.3 billion this past June.
I was actually surprised that I thought it was quite low given the size of the problem. Maybe it is that chances are you still, given that's a gene therapy, it probably has to go through very rigorous tests, multiple phases of clinical trials, and probably getting something like this to market might end up costing like $10 billion. And so that's probably why it's 1.3 billion, not like a $10 billion acquisition.
Yeah. And to me, this is part of the larger trend that we're talking about, of these sort of breakthrough technologies that are really changing the shape of what it's like to have a human life, right? I mean, we're looking at one of the major drivers for heart disease, which is the number one killer of men. And one of my doctor friends, he likes to say that the number one symptom for this number one killer, the first sign that you have heart disease, is death.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So, and
most people just drop dead. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And so the idea that you sort of, in the same way that you conceptually have a vaccine, you just inject this and it's like, oh, that just goes away. Right. And then we also, I forget if we've talked about this or whether we're going to talk about this, but also there's a cancer vaccine for breast cancer, right? That where they're seeing that they could also just eliminate most breast cancer with just a vaccine, the way you got rid of measles. And it's sort of this extraordinary time where we're seeing these breakthroughs that are so enormous and changing the topography of what it's like to live a healthy existence.
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking about, Ben, Anixa Biosciences and Cleveland Clinic has a breast cancer treatment with 75% immune response in phase 1 trials, and zero failure rate of 0 in animal models, which is pretty wild and totally unheard of in cancer research, especially because cancer is not one disease, right? It's just like it's just like a label that we give to like a very, very, very complex situation and very personal type of disease, and this is a vaccine that's been in development for 20 years and now it's in trials, and it could and it's effective for like triple negative breast cancer, which is like the most lethal and most aggressive kind. So yeah, and all this kind of really also brings us to the topic of God mode that we love to explore, essentially the idea that humanity at large is entering this godlike existence in a video game terms. You just like, instead of like dying every 5 seconds, you get to just like cruise through and have a lot of fun. And yeah, I mean, like the traditional, or the past is that to avoid heart disease, you had to work out a lot, right? And really kind of be careful with your food and all these things, and you don't know, you might just like drop dead one day because you had bad genes, like I do actually. Like, if you're South Asian, you have a high propensity to have high LDL, and when it comes to breast cancer, even that, like, there's no prevention there. Whereas in God mode, you just like go get a vaccine and you're good.
Yeah. Now you can eat Cheetos, live in your dad's garage, talk to your Grok girlfriend, and you'll be as healthy as
yeah, exactly. And you don't even need to eat Cheetos if you like, and you can even, we should talk about Retatrutide, which is the other thing I want to talk about.
Yes,
you can get help
so
with
you don't
not
even
eating
need
your
to eat your
Cheetos as well.
Exactly. All right. Well, so that is a perfect segue into our brand new segment that I'm calling, without Dylan's permission, Dylan's Garage, where where we talk about the biohacks of the week that is coming out of Dylan's Garage. And so that brings us to, and I don't even know if I can pronounce this, Retatrutide.
I used to think it was called Retatrutide, which
Yeah.
is kind of funny, but then I actually looked it up. It's like, then apparently, it's apparently called Retatrutide. So,
All right, so what? So it's a GLP-1, but let's start simple.
Yeah.
So what is a GLP-1? Why is that useful? And then why this one over some of the more well-known ones?
Yeah, so GLP-1, everyone has heard of it, stands for glucagon-like peptide 1. It's essentially a peptide, and it acts on GLP-1. These drugs act on GLP-1 receptors, they're agonists, and they control a number of things, including how insulin secretion works when you eat food, the level of fullness that you feel, and also they seem to have a not yet unknown way of kind of calming your brain, almost like giving you more willpower. And so what's exciting is that semaglutide or Ozempic was the first GLP-1, and that is taking the world by storm, right?
Which I started microdosing sometime this morning, actually.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And the discovery of semaglutide took a very long time. Like, it's a really inspiring story. It took like 20 years. But then now it's there.
What is the story? What's inspiring about it?
I don't remember this off the top of my head, but like at Eli Lilly, there was it was like a kind of like a backwater kind of a research project. There was this one individual who really stuck to it, and it was not like an obvious way of, because they were also looking for not weight loss drugs, but for treatments for diabetes, and this one person who just really stuck through the research and ultimately got to this diabetes treatment, and then they give it to patients and for diabetes, and then they noticed that oh wow, these patients are also losing weight, right? So that's a kind of, I'm really not doing the justice to an inspiring story, but yeah, I mean,
but I love you.
One of the one of the most successful drugs of all time, and it's kind of changing humanity at large, so to speak. And so what's interesting is that it's almost like that 4-minute mile story that you like to tell, Ben. Now that we know that this is possible, more and more drugs are coming out, and people are figuring out newer and newer ways of kind of delivering the same results, but much, much better, right? So Retatrutide should really have picked a better name. Retatrutide is a kind of like a third generation of this type of drug. It's a triple agonist, meaning it doesn't just act on GLP-1, it also acts on a couple other receptors, GIP and glucagon receptors, and so these are all kind of tied to the same bodily function. And so, but what that means is that at the same dose, the GLP-1 would have to kind of work harder to achieve certain result, but at the same dose, the
GLP-1 patient, you mean?
The GLP-1 drug, right, Ozempic, would have to work harder to achieve a certain effect. But then if you're kind of like acting on multiple pathways at the same dose, you can kind of like, be more effective, right? So that's sort of like a good mental model to think about a triple agonist. And so what they saw is in their clinical trials, it's still in phase 2 clinical trials. It's not actually available for prescription through through a doctor yet. And what they have seen is that compared to GLP semaglutide, which was like average weight loss was something like 15%, and actually try to get this right. Yeah. 15% after 48 weeks or something, whereas with Retatrutide, it's like 24% weight loss after 48 weeks, and also with fewer side effects, and so on. So that's really interesting, and
So that's what, like
and what's
80% more effective.
Yeah. And what's also interesting is that you can actually buy this on a number of websites that sell peptides, and a peptide is a sequence of amino acids, and it's like we know how to make pretty much any peptide we want, and some are more complicated to make than others, but like you can just make it in a lab once you know the amino acid sequence, right? And so a lot of biohackers have started using Retatrutide, and I know a surprising number of people in Silicon Valley who are using this and microdosing it. I'm including myself, and
where
so
would someone, if they were going to buy it? Not that you're recommending this, but where might they buy it?
So there's a website called Finric, I think. It's a new startup that does tests on any sample that is sent to them. And so if you go to that website, you can find out where to buy pretty much any peptide that you want to buy that is, well, like lab tested. I have purchased in the past from Peptide Sciences. And
how do you spell that Fenric?
I think it's FINNRIK, if I remember correctly.
Right on.
Like that. And what's interesting is that I take like a micro dose, like lower than I think even the lowest tested dose, just 500 milligrams a week. And even at that dose, what it does for me is, I'm pretty lean already, and I work out, and I have a pretty big appetite that my friends make fun of sometimes.
No, I've never done that.
Yeah. And I can eat a lot if I want to, right? But it's almost always like a struggle to like stop myself from eating. And especially like when you're relatively lean, your body kind of wants to eat a little more, right? Like and store a little more fat. And so what this drug does is that it makes it just a little bit easier to not take that extra bite, and just like gives me a little bit more willpower, right? And that what that does is that it just sort of like removes this sort of like extra struggle that I have day to day, in just like stop when I need to stop eating, I can stop eating, right? And that's just super helpful. I put on like just a few pounds, just like stressful times at work, and over the kind of like end of last year and stuff like that, like 5 pounds maybe, and that just like came off so easily when I started this thing. And I usually don't have that much of problems shedding weight, but it's just like it's still a struggle, right? And it's just like this removes the work I needed to do to do that. It's really still important to be doing heavy lifting and stuff like that, so that you don't lose muscle mass alongside fat, but the high level point from a again like a God mode angle is that, hey, you don't it took extraordinary willpower back in the day to say lose weight and stay in shape, but then there are drugs that kind of gives you willpower, right? Like you can pay for willpower almost, which is incredible.
What I think is really interesting about this is that you and I, as engineers, as designers of software, we would talk a lot about this idea of friction, right? And the idea was to remove as much friction from the system as possible in order for people to do the desired behavior. If we want them to sign up and invite their friends, how do you do that in as few steps and as clearly as possible? And conversely, if there was something that you didn't want someone to do, you just hide it behind a click. And we had this rule of thumb that if you put something behind one extra click, just one, right? Like let's say privacy settings, right? And that you want users to have privacy settings, but you mainly don't want them to use them. Put it behind one click and you get an instant 80% drop in users engaging with it at all, right? And so what you're talking about here from a human behavior standpoint is that one click right? It's like a little injection. You push the button, you don't even feel anything. One click once a week, and then all this friction goes away every single meal, 365 days a year. And so that little nudge is enormous change in your life experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing.
And everyone's gonna be like hot and sexy very soon.
Yeah.
And
hot
so
and sexy, no heart disease, no breast cancer.
So here's what's crazy, right? There's the next generation of, so to speak, like the fourth generation of GLP-1 agonists. They're working on actually adding components that also increase muscle growth. These things are called myostatin inhibitors, and yeah. So basically, like you can, there were trials of one of the newest compounds where like you lose weight, you lose fat, and you actually gain muscle, which is wild, right? It's like the whole gym in an injection.
And what's interesting about this is that one of the complaints that people have with products like Ozempic is that it does come with some muscle loss. So you do have to, if you want to lose fat but not lose muscle, you got to get in the gym and you got to lift to even maintain the muscle that you have. So the idea that you can flip it around and now you even get the muscle growth, that's amazing. So here I am, my day one of dosing Ozempic, and I'm already 2 versions behind you, Dylan. I have to upgrade. I think, and then the last thing that I want to say about this is all of these. This is, in some ways, this is the last generation of breakthroughs that we're going to see that are pre-AI driven. Right? Like, for example, the breast cancer vaccine, like you said, 20 years in the making, right? And now some of the scientists and entrepreneurs I'm talking to, they're just like the rate of innovation in cancer vaccines is not going 10x. It's going like 100x or 1,000x with the use of AI. And so we haven't even yet seen the impact of AI hit biotech in a way that us as end users realize the benefits, but it's already in motion right now.
Absolutely, the acceleration there is incredible. There is actually a company called Isomorphic Labs, which is a spin-off of DeepMind, which itself is a part of Google Alphabet, and DeepMind as famously came up with the AlphaFold model that is able to predict protein folding, which is a insanely complicated, like typically to detect or figure out how a single protein folds, it's like a PhD's, worth of work. And AlphaFold reduces this to like minutes, right? And turns out AlphaFold 3, the newest version of it, is like 50% more accurate than even the best-in-class methods at protein folding, and they have mapped out like 200 million structures so far. And this is important because you kind of think of your body as most like a kind of like a bunch of molecules and chemicals, but at the same time, it's also like a giant. You can think of it as a giant factory of nanomachines. And chemicals are kind of they're literally like structured like little tiny machines, and proteins are the cogs of these machines. A lot of these tiny machines are made of proteins, and if we can figure out the right protein to tweak whatever kind of situation, whatever process that's going on in the body, that's incredibly powerful. And so now AlphaFold is spinning up this new company called Isomorphic Labs that's going to supposedly able to kind of design the perfect protein for the perfect or like kind of any given problem, and they're putting like $800 million behind this company, I think. And so exactly what you're talking about, Ben. Very soon we're going to have the first generation of AI designed drugs hit the market, and yeah, it's like it's just a again, like full on God mode. Like I can't think of any other way to put it.
Well, and you might challenge me here that this metaphor might break down, but in the same way that, I mean, if you rewind back to my education in computer science, right? Like I had to learn how to write ones and zeros and sort of do what a basic processor would do, right? And then I learned some machine language and some assembly code and sort of moving up these levels of abstraction. And it was sort of like C++ back in the day. And then the levels of abstraction have just gone higher, where the type of code that you're writing is looking more and more like plain English. And now we're at the point where you are speaking plain English in many cases to an AI, and it's translating in the code, and vibe coding is becoming a thing. And many of us think that like we're in the last days of writing any kind of code. And that same metaphor can apply to the body, right? Where we're like hand searching for these hormones, or searching for these protein sequences that become these peptides that are useful. And we're like way down in the machine language, and the levels of abstraction are going to grow. I mean, do you see a world where one day you're just going to basically be able to speak to some machine that's speaking to your body and just go, hey, I want, 15% more of this or less of that, and it'll just be able to work with you to do that?
Probably, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's definitely where things are headed. Pretty wild.
You're prompted, grow more hair.
I think that's all the topics we had for today. What a fun ride through, some wild set of inventions that are happening out there.
Yeah, it's all coming too fast.
Yeah, and next week I think we're going to have an exciting guest again, and super excited for that, and give us feedback on how we can improve and create more value for you, and hit that subscribe and like button and show us some love as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. Talk to you next time.